going to go over an agenda first, which is that we're going to review the vendor of the product and the product itself at a high level. We're then going to review the user interface and technical highlights of the solution. We'll look at their reporting and analytics capabilities, sales and order fulfillment, manufacturing and purchasing, and finally, finance and financial reporting. Let's take a look at Epicor Corporation at a glance. Epicor has over 20,000 companies running their software worldwide, with over 3,800 employees, and Epicor is located in over 150 countries and does approximately $1 billion a year in revenue. This doesn't make them the largest vendor, but it makes them a healthy size vendor that can handle multinational organizations. And unlike many of the other larger vendors, Epicor is dedicated to ERP software and not juggling dozens of other software and unrelated businesses. In terms of where Epicor ERP's market focus is, it generally covers what we call the classic mid-market, all the way down to smaller mid-market companies up to larger organizations or divisions of multinational corporations. It doesn't compete in the classic low-end QuickBooks space or the very high-end such as SAP or Oracle multinational. In terms of the industry focus as a company, Epicor has products for manufacturing, distribution, retail, and services businesses. The Epicor ERP application we're going to be reviewing here is focused on manufacturing and distribution as its primary drivers. Just some examples of some Epicor customers across the spectrum. You can see that here. Here is an overview of the Epicor ERP modular and functional areas. It's quite busy with many components, and really the key of this objective slide is to understand the depth and breadth of the solution. The vast majority of the functionality that you see on this chart are all native capabilities built into the software and in most cases are not a third-party developed or bolted-on solution. Epicor has a few of those available, but the vast majority of the needs for an enterprise are all handled in one product. The big advantage there being less integration issues, simpler upgrades, common user interface, common data model, and just an overall more streamlined, reliable solution. From a technology perspective, Epicor ERP is somewhat unique. First of all, it's built entirely on what's called a SOA, or Service-Oriented Architecture. Because of that, it allows the system to be able to be customized in ways that a customer may need without in any way messing with the source code. Essentially, think of Epicor as a pre-built solution made out of Lego blocks, such as shown here, but these blocks can be rearranged or functions can be inserted in between or workflowed around it in order to adapt to your unique business processes, all without source code customization, which makes the product easy to upgrade and easy to customize. The product, because of this architecture, can be displayed on a traditional desktop or laptop. It can be displayed through the Windows application or through a Windows or web browser, all using the same common code without different versions of the software for each view. In addition, it uses the modern SOAP and REST services APIs, which means it's very easy to pull data out of Epicor or push data into Epicor, all being enforced by standard business logic rules in ways that make it easy to integrate with other systems. Because of that, too, we're able to present to you advanced features like enterprise search, composite applications, presence, and RSS. So, with that all being said, let's get to our demo. Let's start by taking a look at the Epicor user interface. The version we're showing here is version 10.2, which introduces the new active desktop browser type interface for Epicor. In this example, we are logged in as Penny Lane. Penny Lane is a customer service representative, and she does some key basic things. She tracks customer information, and she tracks orders. So in this example here, she has her most commonly used functions shown right here, where she can just click on one of them and jump into those functions. In addition, she has some favorites here. She often goes in and looks at customer support cases, may manage quotes, does some order entry, and manages her task list. In addition, she has her social enterprise view where she can see her various activities in the system that she needs to respond to, which is similar to an internal Twitter or LinkedIn used specifically for your Epicor data, which we'll look at a little bit later. And you can see her desktop is relatively simple. She also has the opportunity to go to her recents here, which will show her last 20 used activities. If she needs to get to the full menus, she can by clicking the icon in the upper left corner, and here she has access to all the legal entities given to her via security, and within the entity to the modules she has access to, and then within the modules to the submodules. Now let's take a look at Scott Popiel. Scott is a salesperson in the organization, and you can see his icons relate to sales-related functions such as order entry, quote funnel, as well as links to the company's Salesforce account, LinkedIn, and others. You'll see he also has his own favorites here related to the things that he does, and if he were to go into the full menus, he'll have access to the companies that he would normally use, where, for example, unlike Penny, he has access to the Mexican operations. You can see here also he has Epicor data discovery views on his desktop, such as order history over the last year, as well as the total count of orders entered today. Some simple visualizations that you can embed, and we'll look at those a little bit further. Let's go ahead and close Scott, and now we'll take a look at Brian Howard. Brian is the CFO, and you'll see his views are much more financial oriented, such as the current AR balance, key performance indicator, how many dollars worth of shipped but not invoiced, and the customer's overdue information, as well as past balances due. He also has access to the Concur expense accounting system as well as their Salesforce. So you can see his view of the operation is customized to his needs, and each user can create their desktop the way they want. Now we'll go ahead and open up the overall Epicor administrator user here, which we're going to be using for most of the demo, and it has even more capabilities set up on it in this case. They have shortcuts for finance, manufacturing, and sales and CRM, and then within those you have various shortcuts as well. Again, you can see that you have these Epicor data discovery views, which are ways of showing charts, graphs, and statistics that come out of Epicor's built-in queries. This capability is standard with all Epicor systems, and you have a lot of flexibility to do a lot of business intelligence right with this without necessarily using more sophisticated options. So for example, this shows us our customers' days overdue. And if we were to zoom into this, it opens up Epicor Data Discovery with a lot more capabilities to customize that view the way we need it to. In this view, you can see this one is driven off of a particular query, and of course you can use your own queries and develop them or use the dozens that are included out of the box. Here we have various filters, such as you can filter by customer group, and then if you click on those filters, the data will automatically update in real time with those views. Or you could even swap this. So instead of customers across here and dollar values on the left, you can click here, and now we're looking at dollar values across and customers on the left. You can do various highlighting, change the formats or layouts, and even do matrix views such that are very similar to pivot tables, for example. There's a lot of flexibility in data discovery to create views that you want, and then you can set up an entire web page for it or embed the smaller versions onto your home page here. As you can see, some of these can automatically animate through key information. This one shows open order values based on category of sales. So now it shows 563,000 for automotive, 642,000 for commercial, etc. as it moves. On the left again, you have your favorites, and if you go into favorites, you have various functions. If you click on the function, then you'll get into that screen where you can perform that function. Again, you have your recents, where you can see your most recently used functions, which is very common. And you also have the ability to get to your full menu system here. And again, you have various layouts and formats to look at that. You can look at it as boxes, or you can look at it in the more traditional hierarchical view here as well. You also have the ability to search the menus. By clicking the search icon here, you have our enterprise search, which we'll show later, and our menu search. So for example, if you were looking for aged receivables, you can start typing, and as you type, it filters the list. Aged brings up aged payables, aged receivables, and man-aged inventory stock status. If I add an R to it, now it shows us specifically that one function, and it shows us the menu tree to get there if you want to learn where to find it within the menus. Click on it, and of course it will launch that application right from there. Now let's take a look at an actual data entry screen. And we're going to focus in this case on the sales order entry screen, but whatever we show you here is going to apply to virtually every screen in the system since Epicor uses a common code base throughout. So this is our typical sales order entry screen waiting for us to go ahead and enter an order number. We have a number of options in here. Across the top you have your traditional Windows menus, including a help menu. Epicor's help is extremely extensive, so if we go to Application Help, we'll get a full amount of help regarding the particular screen we're in and whatever tab we're in on that screen, which in this case is our summary screen. If I wanted to look at a higher level as to what we're looking at, you can always navigate up to that section. In addition, if you're on a given field and then you say Application Field Help, that field information will show as you click on the different fields. If we click on this field like PO, then you'll see the PO number field. If you hit the post button here now, as you click on different fields, you'll see specific help about those fields and it'll always be available on the left. In addition, a very important feature here is the technical details option. And what this shows us is specifically where in the database this field on this screen exists. So if I click Order Date, that's in the Order Head table with the field name Order Date. The reason why this is important is if you're going to write your own reports or dashboards, to be able to know the information on your screen, where to get it in the system, can save you a ton of time since like Epicor, like most other ERP systems, has many tables and fields and things that aren't always where you think they might be because of all of the different related data. So by doing this, if you know what you want on the screen, it's very easy to figure out what you want in your tables. So now if we want to be able to bring up an order, we can simply click on the order number here, or we can click the search button which says sales order. We're going to spend a little time on this because this capability of searching is used throughout Epicor wherever there are any lookup fields. We can start with a simple search by searching for an order number or a PO number and the like, or starting at a certain location. We can also do a search within a search. By clicking Customer here, we can bring up the Customer Search dialog and now pick one of our customers from the list, which returns back into our order search. Now if we click Search, we're only getting orders that apply to customer Addison. Some additional choices here are Quick Search. So if we click Quick Search, you can have user-definable ways of searching. In this example, there's one. And this search allows us to search by customer ID, by the part number they ordered, by the customer's part number, by their sales territory, or what have you. Again, user-definable. Some other options here are business activity query searches, advanced searching, or even on a tag, where you can actually take records that you might be working on or analyzing and search them in a tag. So for example, if we go back to our basic search and highlight a couple of records, say they represent customers who are overdue, we can right click on them and tag those selected records with anything we want. So I can create a tag called collections. If it's under my tags, they're only usable by me. If I put them under shared, any users in the system can search them. So by doing that, in the future, anytime I bring up this search and I type collections, it'll only bring up records tagged with the word collections, which are the three I had selected before. We'll go back and bring up our full search. We can maximize this window to see more information. And what you're seeing here is an Epicor grid, which you'll see throughout the system in virtually every screen and every dashboard. I'll spend a little time focusing on what you can do in a grid because whatever you can do here, you can do in other places. If we wanted to go ahead and reorder the grid, you can by moving the columns around. We can also sort by any column by clicking the up sort for ascending or descending. You can shrink the columns, you can widen the columns, or double click and the system, like Excel, will widen the column to whatever is necessary. In addition, you can right click and say Show Group By, which allows you to start grouping columns on common data. So if we group by and throw customer ID up here, it collapses it to showing one row per customer. So customer Barriston has 8 orders, and if I hit the plus sign, I'll then see the breakdown of those orders. You can also do more than one group by, so we could group by customer ID and order date. So if we were to look at Addison, we'd see these are the different dates they had orders, and on certain dates they had more than one order, so that you would see it here. We can group the other way around, so now it shows every date we had an order, and then within the date, which items are in there. So if we find a date with, let's say, more orders that might be in the system, like here, we can see that there's one order each for Addison, and that's all from our grouping. We can also do summaries. So for example, if we had a dollar amount here, or in this case we're just going to use the sales order number as an example, you can get a total of value of their sales order amounts. So keeping this simple, we'll just group by customer ID, and this shows us that Addison has $481,000 worth of orders, whereas Edwards only has 10,000. Any of these can then be copied to Excel with the sorting that you see intact here. So we'll go ahead and say copy to Excel. And now once you click on the plus sign in Excel, you can see all of the underlying data that was exported. If we remove the grouping and now say copy to Excel, you'll see it'll just come over as it was in the grid, fully usable, analyzable. In addition, you can also go ahead and do what's called a grid filter, which works exactly like Excel. So if we wanted, we could say filter it where customer is equal to Barriston, or you can do multiple. Or we'll go ahead and clear that filter, and you can do a range. So you could say, for example, custom, where the date is less than and you can add more criteria, but the date is greater than, and now we'll get a list of only the orders in those date ranges. So you can see it's very flexible. We'll go ahead and close the search now and just open it as an ordinary search and bring in a given record, say, starting at order 5016, and we're going to select order 5016 into the system. Now that we have an order up on the system, let's review the capabilities of the system by studying the user interface. What we're going to cover here around the order entry screen applies to virtually every form and screen within Epicor, so we're going to take some time here and go over this in some detail. First of all, it'll have the standard Windows look and feel in terms of a file menu, edit menu, and the like. On the left, you'll see a tree view available. So here, under order 5016, if we hit the down arrow, we'll see that that order is made up of 2 lines, which you can also see in the summary area. On the right, the summary area is highlighted, which brings in the most important fields from the header, the lines, the releases, and the summary, or the totals. So for example, here you've got your bill tos and ship tos, your line item details, and your totals, and all of your data can be entered on this one screen. If we click on the lines here, you can see here on the left we have line 1 and line 2, and we can either click the line and hit the lines tab here or one of the lines here, and the system will allow us to look at the details. So you can see here for a given line there's actually quite a bit of information and features capable, but most of this is hidden from your normal summary screen since you don't use this on every single order. You can see advanced features like customer part cross-references, upsell, cross-sell, suggested or recommended items. You can see substitutables, CRM campaigns where this order came from or which campaign event, project-related information. There's additional tabs of information like commission information for this particular line. You can split the commission up to 5 ways. Comments for this line that go on the sales order, the pick list, the pack list, the invoice, and even sales kit details. Now, what's an important differentiator here is if you look at this line has a quantity of 35 on order, but that's actually made up of multiple releases. If we click the release button here, we can see there are 3 releases associated with this. If we click the first release, you'll see the screen goes into the Releases tab. So for that line of 35, that's actually made up of multiple releases here, shown in a list of 10, 15, and 10, with additional information which you can see in the grid or in the detail view. For a given release, you can see you can have a different need by date, ship by date. You could even ship it to a different customer, a different ship to, from a different site, from a different warehouse, etc. So you have a lot of information that you can customize on a release by release basis, including a specific job that the release is related to for production, or a project, or even a one-time ship to. So we'll just go back to our summary screen and look at some of the buttons that we have on here. Over here we have something called our change log. So for example, the current need by date is 9/29. If we were to change this date to, let's say, 10/2 and save this, the system will go ahead and automatically update that data, but because we told the system we care about this field, a change is logged. So if we look at our change log entries, and the date that we're doing this recording is 8/31, you can see that it logged changes here, and if we look at the details, the need by date was changed by user Epicor at 1:17 p.m. from 9/29 to 10/2. So you can specify which fields you care about, and the system will track what they were, what they became, who changed it, and when. You'll also see a button here for memos. Here you can put in any types of memos that you might want. You can have multiple memos, and you can categorize the memos. Of course, like anywhere in Epicor, you can add unlimited user-definable fields for tracking anything else you might want about those memos, and you can see them in a detail or list form. You could even see them in both at the same time, so if we tear the list off and snap it to the bottom, for example, and you can do this in most screens in Epicor, or snap it to the top, as you click on the detail or the list view, you can see the details in the bottom. We also have the ability to record phone conversations that we have with the customer. These have additional fields, and they're always linked to the customer. They're part of the Epicor CRM system and will all be consolidated around the customer and salesperson information. You can also have emails logged from the customer into this form as well if you're using the Epicor Information Worker module. We also have attachments capability. So you'll see overall this customer has an attachment here, which is a special barcode label as an example, and within the body of the sales order we have various attachments. So for example, if we click on this MSDS, which is a material safety data sheet, we can see those attachments here. These attachments can be related to files that are somewhere on your hard drive or on your network. They can be files that are automatically copied to the Epicor server, or they can be files stored in SharePoint or the new Epicor DocStar. If it's in the Epicor DocStar, you can open it up in context of DocStar, and then within here you're able to see all of the capabilities available in DocStar, including if there were any other prior versions and the like. You can also access any of Epicor's screens through a web browser. So for example, here we have the Epicor main menus available just as you're seeing now, and then within there you can launch any given screen. So if we were to launch order entry, for example, now you see the same order entry screen opened in a web browser, and we could even put the same order number in and see the same information, including the detail lines, the headers, the releases, just like you saw before. You can print the forms from anywhere, etc. Just like in standard Epicor, you can also right-click on a given field and drill down into all of the related information. Epicor also supports simplification, so if you don't need forms with all of these features, you can easily customize those forms to show less information. For example, this sales order entry form shows you the same order, but with just limited information that this particular customer only uses, which is a bill to and line information, which is something akin to what you might see in QuickBooks. Some of the other powerful capabilities with Epicor ERP are its advanced document handling capabilities. So, for example, here we could just print an order acknowledgement out, and we'll just do the standard example of it. And you can see we have different styles, one that has the customer logo, one that's generic, and we'll just go ahead and print that to preview here. And you can see here it's a standard form with the company logo and the information on the form. However, we have more advanced capabilities. Right from here, we could manually go ahead and email this document, or we could use our advanced printing and routing, which is a capability in the system that allows you to automate the process flows, and if you have Epicor DocStar, allows you to do powerful related attachment and archiving capabilities. So for example, we say email and capture order here. Now before we do that, let's just note here that these given lines actually have, if we were to drill into these parts, documents associated with them, such as specifications, diagrams, or drawings. So if we go ahead and run this using our email and capture option, and we'll just go ahead and preview it, the system will go ahead and generate these documents, which are the sales order, and is programmed to automatically pick up the attachments that relate to the sales order and send them to the customer. So in this case, you can see it's previewed the order. However, if we close the order here, it also goes ahead and takes everything that we've sent to the customer and then attaches it back to the order as a permanent archive. And it's gone ahead and attached everything that we sent to the customer, including the attachments, into the DocStar repository. So if we click here and say View in DocStar, we'll go ahead here and see the related documents that we sent to the customer, the way we sent them to the customer. Now, if we were to go ahead and go into our inbox in our email and look at this as if we were the recipient of this order acknowledgement, you'll see I received an email, and in the email is a copy of the order acknowledgement and a copy of the related schematic for the DSS 1000 that's on the order. I didn't have to attach that. That was related to the part, and because it was related to the part, it was automatically sent to the customer based on our advanced print routing rules. This capability can be used throughout the system, whether it's in purchase orders, parts, receivers, documents, but it allows you to be very flexible in terms of automated information flow to customers, vendors, and other partners, and to adhere to any regulatory requirements. Now let's talk a little bit about finding information. As you saw before, we could easily go into an order and look up an order by, let's say, a purchase order number or a customer number, and that's a traditional way that you would look up information in systems. However, Epicor has a powerful universal or global search known as enterprise search, and if we click on that search, and click on Enterprise Search. Here, now we can search on anything in the system. Any words in any CRM conversation, any numbers or words in any documents. So if a customer calls up and says they have purchase order 42471, we can simply go to this universal search here, hit enter, and the system will find everywhere in the system 42471 exists, which it exists in an order and it exists in an invoice because this invoice was generated from that order. Once you have that information, you're able to then drill down into it. So if we right-click on this invoice, we can go to the invoice tracker, which will show us more information about this invoice, and will show us all of the related information about this invoice. So we'll go into our enterprise search here, go to our enterprise search function, and we'll put in a number such as a PO number that we got from the customer. This could be anything. This could also relate to, say, the customer's comments they've made in a CRM conversation, in an email. It could be a part number, any text or data anywhere in the system. Once we hit the enter button, the system will instantly retrieve everywhere in the system where the number, in this case, 42471, shows up. In this case, it shows up both on a sales order and on an invoice because that invoice was created from that sales order and it copied through the purchase order. If you want, you can drill further, right-click on the order, and then use all of the standard Epicor drill downs like our sales order tracker. Trackers in Epicor allow you to look at information but not change information, which means you can give access to a broader group of users, and trackers also show you related information. So in this example, this shows us this given order, which is order 5016 in all of the lines, but it also allows us to see if there were any shipments against the order. In this case, there was one shipment. Like anywhere in Epicor, you can right-click on the key field and drill down to the related information. So from the sales order tracker, we're now going to drill into the shipment tracker, which will show us all the shipment details. From here, we can hit tracking details, and if this was an actual legitimate order, you'd be able to then see all of the tracking information. Some additional tabs on the tracker in this case shows us the invoices that were created from that order, which we also saw in the enterprise search. We can even see a summary of all transactions, which shows you as you click on the line what releases are on that line, and then if you click on any of these releases, if they had production jobs, what they had, and if there have been any shipments against that line, you would see the shipment data here. So you can see everything about the life of that order in one place, all from that universal search. Some additional things you can do with this search are search for just a general word, like, say, engineering. If we do that, we'll see that engineering appears in a number of places throughout the system. Perhaps I forgot we had a customer named Barriston Engineering, and I didn't really want to retrieve anything regarding them. You can, similar to Google, put in a minus sign and say Barriston here, and that means find everything with the word engineering, but not the word Barriston. And now the list is limited. You'll also see a tag cloud here, which shows you the types of documents the word was found in. The bigger the letters or font, the more records were found. So we can see we have a lot of job operations with the word engineering, a few parts transactions, and a handful of order lines and quote lines. If I click on parts transactions, you can see here where the word engineering was found. You can also broaden the search. So if I search for showing all sources, so we'll go back to our central, ring, star ring, this says find everything where the word ring is located somewhere. So spring has the word ring in it. Bear ring has ring in it. Tor ring, for example. So you can see how you can make it broad as well. This enterprise search can also be done from any web browser on the web or from for any application. So for example, if we go back into our Microsoft Outlook here, and let's imagine a customer asked for a list of their orders, we could simply reply back to them. So for example, here are your orders. And let's say this related to Addison. We can just type Addison order, highlight what we want to search on, and then hit a special hotkey, and the enterprise search will come back with the results that we're looking for. It's shown here in the Google-like form, and we can also change this into a different view. So we can click the grid button here and look at this in a grid, or we can click back to that view. We also have the ability to go ahead and do an insert on this. So if we want, we can insert this, everything that's found, and we don't have to put every field. We could just put a handful of fields here, and then click insert, and the system will go ahead and insert that data right into your email document, and you can send over their shipment or order information just like that right from Outlook. Let's talk about business process management. Epicor is based on building blocks of code that allow the system to run your enterprise resource application. But because those blocks are based on a service-oriented architecture, it's very easy to modify the way the product works without modifying in any way the source code of the software. This means the ability to upgrade and turn on and off enhancements based on your business needs and requirements is very simple to do. With business process management, we're able to make Epicor work the way your business needs it to work, not the way it may have been designed out of the box. In this particular example, we are looking at a business process management or BPM workflow designed to handle commission analysis and regulation on sales orders. What we're going to show you here can apply to virtually any forms, fields, and data in the system for your needs. In this case, if an order has an excessive discount based on the amount of the order, a notification will either get sent to Scott, Penny, or Brian Howard. And then they will get an email, and based on their response to that email, they can approve or not approve the order for being able to be sent to the customer with the appropriate discount that the salesperson requested. So now that you've looked at the actual BPM, let's go to an actual order. Here is an order for $115 with no discount. Using the logic in this BPM, and what we're going to show you here is not out of the box the way the software works. If we put a discount over 10% but less than 25%, it's designed to simply highlight the discount field in yellow. That indicates that it's something you should look at and be concerned about, but not something that needs to get run up the chain for an approval. However, if we put a really large discount in, like 30%, a custom message pops up, as you can see here, which is not a standard Epicor message. So I can go ahead and ignore that message, and then the system will go ahead and color the field in red. If I try and leave that high discount rate and save this order, I'll get this discount request box, which is part of the BPM rules. In here, I have to put a reason. And once I put my reason and submit it, the system will automatically notify me that it's been sent for approval, and it will automatically put this order on hold, awaiting that approval. To approve this, the manager could either be looking at a dashboard or they can get an alert via an email. So in this case, we'll go ahead and check our email and see a new order has come in. That order 5575 is above the 25% maximum and approval is needed. And since I'm the manager, I'm going to reply to this email, and I could do this from a mobile device or Outlook in this case, and just say approved, but I'm only offering 23%. And you can actually go to the data field in the email and modify it and click send here. Now that we've sent it, we'll allow it to process the email and send it back to Epicor. We'll go ahead and minimize this screen. So now we're back at looking at the order. And all we have to do is click the refresh button, which will show us what the order looks like now, not the last time we looked at it. And you'll see now that the order has been taken off of hold automatically, and the discount rate has been reduced from 30 to 23%. So you can see here, through our BPM technology, you are able to do a great deal of functional workflow and requirements for your business, all with a simple drag and drop workflow design mechanism that's all native and part of Epicor. Now let's talk about dashboards. Dashboards is Epicor's way of allowing you to report on information in the system. Of course, we've got varieties of reports that we can look at, such as an aged receivables or payables report, and those are all generated through Microsoft SSRS or Crystal reports. However, using dashboards gives a number of advantages. The data on dashboards are all real-time, much more manipulatable, and they're easier to set up and design. In addition, the report is only accurate as of the last time it was printed, where the dashboard is always up to date. So, as an example, we're going to open up one of the many dashboards that comes with the system, which you can use as a template to modify for your own needs if you'd like. And this is called our Billing, Bookings, and Backlog. So let's see what we have here. In the case of this dashboard, it's broken into 4 separate quadrants, and each of these can have sub-information. So the billings here is showing us a list of all invoices for a certain date range. We can also click on a different tab here and see that same information but shown as a chart showing me my sales by day. I can also look at it as sales by customer in the chart, or just a filtered list of only things that were invoiced today. We can look at another one of these tabs. This is our backlog chart, which basically is order data. And this shows us open orders by customer in a pie chart, or the grid-related details behind it. The bookings chart shows typically what's been booked for the month, again in a grid form, as well as today's information. And our shipment information shows what's been shipped for the time period, what's shipped today, and on-time ratings so that we've shipped 65% of our orders on time, we've shipped 21% late, and 23% early. On any of these grids, you can use the standard Epicor grid capabilities. You saw those earlier where we were able to do group by, summarize by, pivot tables, or copy to Excel. You can also take any of these quadrants, double click and snap them out and look at them in a larger size if you need to. So we can take this and make it larger if we need to look at more information. And because this is just a standard Epicor grid, any of these fields can be right-click, open with, and then you can drill down into the information. So here we can drill down into the order, or we could drill down into the part, or we could drill down into the customer, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and close this dashboard and look at another example. This is our job cost exceptions dashboard, which is actually just a single pane dashboard instead of four, but it shows us all of our jobs that are in production and which ones as of now are over budget, under budget, or on budget in terms of materials, labor, and subcontractor costs. If we click on one of these tabs, this filters the list to only the jobs that are over budget in terms of actual material costs versus estimated. Here are only the ones that are over in terms of labor time that's been posted to these jobs, and here are the ones that are over estimates for just subcontractors. A very useful report for being able to see at a glance how efficient your shop floor is running. Another example is our quote funnel. This shows us all of our sales order quotes, which are our opportunities from a CRM perspective. And here's the confidence that the salesperson has that we're going to get that quote. If we were to click on the line details of that quote, you'll see the lines on the bottom update to reflect the contents of that quote. If I click on a different quote, you'll see the lines reflecting that as well. Now, one of the things you'll notice is this is called Publish and Subscribe. So this segment of the dashboard is publishing and this segment is subscribing. And that's how the dashboard can show related information as you look in other zones of the dashboard. Now, in this case, the order has a 55% chance of closing. We could easily go into the order here, the quote here, and drill down into it if we wanted to. And once in here, you'll see the standard fields that are available for the quote, which we'll go over a little later. But here we see the odds of this quote closing are 55% according to the salesperson. Now I could change that number here if I wanted, make it 45%, and then we could go ahead and close this quote. And once you do that, if we refresh the dashboard, you'll see now that this 55% on quote 1022 is now refreshed to 45%. However, this dashboard is called an updatable dashboard. Any of the fields that are not gray are changeable, and of course those changes have to fit within the business logic of the system. So for example, if I wanted to change this quote to 60%, and this one to 45, and this to 35, once I hit save, the system will go back into the source document and change that data. So if we were to drill back into this quote, you'll see that the 60% that I entered on the dashboard has been updated back into the original document, which provides for powerful high-speed update capabilities. In addition, that also makes it easy to update data remotely. So for example, we'll minimize this, and we're going to go ahead and open up our Epicor Mobile Access Simulator for an iPad. This can be on an iPhone, Android, or any other HTML5 browser. We'll log into our Epicor system here, and we'll get our home page for what dashboards have been exposed to mobile devices. In this case, we want to go into our CRM menu and into our quote confidence dashboard, which shows us that same data that we saw within the dashboard. And here's that order 1022 with a 60% chance or confidence. If we want to go see the details on this, we can, and we can actually change the data from our mobile device. So let's say we make this 65%. And we'll go ahead and close that record and save our changes, and the system has now updated those changes back in Epicor. So we'll go ahead and close this. Go back to our quote funnel. Now notice this was showing it from the last update. If we refresh this, this is now 65%. So you can see that these dashboards can be used to expose and allow outside mobile users to access and update your data without being a developer. Very simple. So as you can see, the power of our dashboard capabilities really allows you to get data out of Epicor versus just entering data in. Epicor also has an additional way to look at your information or data analysis in the system, and that's called Epicor Data Analytics. Epicor Data Analytics is a hosted solution that talks to your Epicor data whether you're using Epicor in the cloud or on premises. If I scroll over here, you can see you can embed parts of Epicor data right on your menu, or you can go into the full interface through any browser. So in this example, this is an executive dashboard that shows us fiscal year-to-date gross margins, this year's sales versus last year's sales, rolling 12-month sales. And we can scroll down and look at other information. All this information is all on one web page showing us quote information, percentages over the next 3 months, the past months, shipping variations, production volumes, production efficiency, top made parts, least manufactured components, quality, month to date scrap percentages, scrap by reason, rolling months. This is all a single dashboard, and it's all very easy to customize and create your own. Some other examples that we have here under dashboards, we could look at, for example, an accounts receivable dashboard. And if we click to that, the system will now show us the information that relates to our receivables, and this is all done instantly. So you can see here invoice amount, paid amount. We can scroll down, see our top customers by invoice amount, top customers by invoice balances over the period of time. Some other dashboard examples might relate to production operations. So if we take a look at that, we can see our setup hours, our actual production hours, our labor costs by part, actual labor costs by period. And we'll just look at one final example of one of these, and that would be sales analysis. In the sales analysis, you see you can put comments on here if you wanted to. You can look at our gross margins, our sales, sales geographically based on hotspots, sales in a pivot table, which of course can then be selected, drilled down on, exported to Excel, gross margins by customer, by parts, by costs, etc. So you really can slice and dice your data, and all of this data comes pre-normalized so that you do not need to understand Epicor's internal data structures to be able to set up meaningful data analytics. Let's look at some of the ways that the master data in the system of Epicor is maintained and related. The first screen we're looking at here is the customer tracker screen. As we mentioned earlier, trackers in Epicor are versions of data entry screens that are generally considered read-only. So if you give a user access to the customer tracker, they can look at all the information about the customer, but they can't actually change any of the data. One of the advantages of trackers is not only does it have the master data, but it also typically has all the related data in the system that relates to that customer master. So in this example with the customer tracker, you're going to see your typical master information about a customer, like their name, their address, their territory, their phone numbers. You can see the things like their contacts, their ship tos, etc. However, if we want to really drill into what's related to this customer, we can get a true 360-degree view. So if we go to the Financial tab here, and then go to the Invoices tab, we can see all of the open invoices that are on file for this customer. If we click Closed, these are all the closed invoices. If we clicked All, we'd see all invoices. And if we click Invoice Lines, we could see the line and item level detail from this customer. If you recall from earlier, because this is a standard grid in Epicor, you can do things like show group by, show summaries, and even show filters. So in this case, we could go ahead and group this by items sold. So if we group this by the amount of revenue, for example, we can go to the line amount here and say sum. And now when we scroll over, we can see for this part, 0201223, they have $3,400 on invoice lines. Or for this part here, such as DCD 200 ml, they have $277,000. And if you click the button here, you can see those details. You can even sort on multiple levels. So if we wanted to see it on sales by part, by date, for example, we can grab the date column here from invoice date. Or we could reverse it and say by date, what did we sell? So for example, if we go in this particular line here, so we'll find a day where we sold more than one item. You can see here on this date, 4 different items were sold, and then within each item, see the detailed invoices. We can see the payments paid to this customer, credit information. We can see their existing credit information in terms of their receivable. So if we go to invoices and aging, you can see they're 30, they're 60, they're 90. We can see any quotes we have for the customer, orders, open production jobs, RMAs, shipments, tasks or the to-do list items that relate to the customer, as well as any CRM phone conversations, which we can then summarize into a chronological log of the discussions we've had with the customer. You can even here go ahead and record new telephone conversations while looking at the customer here. So you can see at a glance you have a great ability to see a lot of information throughout the system for the customer just from one tracker screen. Looking at the part master file, we can get an idea of how information is stored about parts or items in the system and its capabilities. At a high level, you have a part number, a part description, and general information such as the group or class it belongs to. Within the group or class, you can set up many of the defaults that you'll see in terms of all of the fields that relate to a part. So by entering the part number and the group and class it belongs to, the majority of the extra fields are filled out. We have other fields here, and we'll just focus on some highlights, such as run out, which means continue selling this part until there's no more left, then don't allow it to be sold, versus reordering. Whether you need receiving or shipping documentations like certifications, whether you need to track lot numbers or serial numbers, or in Epicor, we allow you to track lot and serial numbers for the same item, which you'll see later. We have a variety of other fields here, including our accounting setups, as well as attributes such as weight, height, thickness, and other user-definable fields and pictures. At a site level, which is typically where your division or location is, you can set up information about what warehouses you have at that site. And you can see this hierarchically as well here. So if we go to sites, we have one site, and then within the site you have one or more warehouses. And then within the warehouse, you can have one or more bins defined. So here would be the list of warehouses. Here's the primary bin with it where this is stored. This is the cycle count information where the system can automatically calculate an ABC code, etc. In terms of replenishment and planning, this is from a manufacturing perspective, how far out you want to plan in terms of blocks. If you have lot sizes, like you only want to make these in 100-unit chunks, as well as typical buffers, preparations, horizon planning for short horizon or standard, that's all available here. And then in the warehouse, you also have detailed information such as the min, the max, the reorder points, and the reorder quantities. So you can see here, just at a glance, we have an extensive amount of information about the item so that you're able to properly set it up and configure it so the system can automatically replenish it via manufacturing suggestions, or if it's a purchased item, via purchasing suggestions that are optimized based on lot sizes, shipping information, availability, time, and so forth. Another example of master file information is our lot traceability. So if we pick one of our items here, like our Poromot, and we look at one particular lot number 1, you can see that that lot was received on this packing slip. And this packing slip was then used in incoming inspections. And then from there, you can see all of the transaction history of that lot. Because every field is drillable, if it relates to something else, we can go back and look at the receipt entry tracker here to see the details of that given receipt. So here you can see everything about that, all of the lines that have been received, and then all of the details about the receipt of that line just by clicking on that. We also have a serial traceability analysis here. So for example, for this item, DSS 1012, these are all the serial numbers we have of that item in the system. And if you click on each serialized item for this, you can see all of the transactions that have touched this item by looking at it. So for example here for serial number 14, you see the details here for serial 101213, all of the details here, and this shows you what transaction it was. A purchase to our inventory, then it was picked, to stock, and then it was shipped to the customer, and the related information. Here's the PO it came in on. If it was shipped to the customer, you can see the order, and then you can see the pack. If you wanted to drill down in the order, you can say open with sales order tracker and look at the sales order details. So here are the sales order details that related to that serial number transaction. You could reprint the sales order, email it, what have you. So you can see the information that we have in the system is very detailed and very related, and you're able to drill down and drill around to get to any of that information from anywhere that matters. Now let's talk about our opportunity and quote order entry screen. In Epicor, CRM sales opportunities and quotes are one and the same. That's why you'll see within our quotes information such as the confidence of closing the quote or opportunity, marketing sources and activities, and so forth, as well as sales tasks paths. We'll go ahead here and just create a new opportunity quote, put in a customer we want to quote. We don't have our purchase order number at this time. Say when we think the quote will be due by or when we hope to hear an answer, and let's say we have a 50% chance confidence of closing this. At this point, we can now go ahead and put a new line on this quote. The first line we're going to quote is a simple distribution item, and we'll go ahead and say it's a washer for expected quantity of 10, and we can accept the default price. I hit enter to go to the next new line, and in this case I'm going to go ahead and select DSS 700. This is a manufactured item. If we go to our lines here, we can see the detail of information about an item line in terms of extra fields such as customer part number, marketing and sourcing information, taxes, need buys, and so forth. However, in this case, let's say the customer wants a price on manufacturing 1 of these, 10 of these, and 100 of these. So we'll do, let's say, 4 price breaks. Now we'll go to the manufacturing tab here, and from the items grid, we will go ahead and get details. And we can see that this item only has 1 revision and it's active. So from there, we're going to get the method of manufacturing, or the steps and the materials it takes to make this item. Right now it takes a saw, a drill, a prep, and it uses this piece of tube steel. We can go ahead and modify this information for just this quote if this is a customized version of this item. For example, suppose the drilling operation, if we look at it, according to this we can drill 350 pieces per hour, but there's no setup time. Let's go ahead and put a half-hour setup on the drilling operation, and on a sawing operation we'll go ahead and put a 15-minute setup time. So whether we make 1 of these or 100 of these, they both require a fixed setup time. We'll go to our engineering tab, and then from here we can pick from our descriptions items we might need. So for example, if I type bolt and say maybe we need a bolt as part of this and we need it at the drilling operation, we now drop that, and that's related to this operation in terms of scheduling and requirements. Say we want to add another operation, and from here let's say we want to add an inspection operation. So I start to type inspection, pick the operation we want, put it where we want in the process, or in this case we want it at the end, so if we drop it into operations by default it'll go to the end. And again, we can look at the detail on that particular operation, and that operation has some various statistics. So in this case, let's say it takes 15 minutes to set up the inspection area for this job. So we've now taken a standard revision for this item and modified it for just this quote. If we go to the Worksheet tab, we can now see our pricing information. So in order to make 1 of these items based on the setup and run times, it's $63.87 per item. Based on our commissions we offer, we need to charge $86.50 to achieve our company markup preference of 30%. So if we override this price, we can say, I want a nice round number, so I'll say $88 for a quantity of 1. If we go to a quantity of 10, you see the price decreases dramatically because most of the cost is a setup cost. So we need to charge $10.32, and in this case I'm going to choose to charge, let's say, $10.99 from a marketing perspective. And to make 100, you see it costs $2 a piece, or $2.71 with commission. So we'll go ahead and charge $2.99 for that price. And then finally, to make 500, it costs $1.50, and we'll go ahead and charge that $1.50. That's fine. Now let's go ahead and add a new line, and this time we're going to create our CFG-beacon item. This item is a configured item. It's a simple configuration, but notice our configure button becomes available after selecting this item. Now we can see the configurator here, where we can put a quantity needed, the lens color of this flashing light, say it's red, and notice that now updates here, the voltage required, 12 volt, and the bulb type, filament or LED. If we change the voltage to 24, you'll notice that the bulb type locks as LED because there's no 24 volt availability for a filament. Do we need a mount? If so, now the mounting becomes enabled, and we need a magnetic mount. And then the system goes ahead and prices it. And if there's a second screen of information, we can take a look at it, such as make sure these are made well, and save this. And the system goes ahead and configures the materials needed to make this and builds a custom configured smart part number based on the choices made. If we were to go to our lines for this item and look at the manufacturing details, get those details so you can look at them here, you will see here retrieved in is the steps and materials to make the item as it was configured, the red lens that we chose, the magnetic mounting bracket, etc. All of that was done automatically by going through the configuration. We can even create a completely brand new on-the-fly item because Epicor is not only designed for make-to-stock and make-to-order manufacturers, but people who basically are complete job shops. So maybe we want to create a new item called a spring, and this item does not exist in our item master. We can put a description in. We'll call it Addison's Spring. And now we can go to those same manufacturing details here and put in the materials and the steps needed. So for example, if we go to engineering and operations, perhaps this takes a bending operation. And then after a bending operation, it requires a laser cutting. And then after the laser cutting, it goes through an inspection. And in terms of what we're working on, let's say this is worked on sheet metal. So we go into here, sheet or stainless steel, put it on the materials. It's needed at the first step. And now we've essentially completely custom configured one of the items on the quote as well. We can go ahead and send this quote to the customer once everything is flagged as engineered. So we'll go to the Actions menu here, say Print Form, and we'll go ahead and print preview the quote so that you can see what would automatically get sent to the customer. Here's the quote. This could automatically be emailed. It can be manually emailed. And you notice for the items that have the break pricing, you can see those breaks on the quote. For the item that's configured, it's automatically got descriptions filled in that can appear on the quote based on the configurations, and then the total quote price. Now suppose some time passes and the customer wants to take this quote and says go ahead with it, but we only want some of the items. We can go here to quote, create sales order, and then choose the lines that we want to go ahead and turn into an order. So let's say we just want to go ahead and manufacture the first two items at whichever quantities the customer chose. So we'll accept these defaults here. At this point, the customer knows when they need this item by, and they also want to know what we would typically know what the PO number is at this point. So we'll enter that, and we'll go ahead and say create, and the system will now automatically create a new sales order number 5635 based on the items from this quote. So if we go ahead and close this, or we can now look at related sales orders and see the details and drill into it from here, we can now look at the sales order that was created from this quote. So here we can see the 2 lines on the sales order. And at this point, we could go ahead and process this order if we want, or still go ahead and make any changes we might want to make. We might also want to use our social enterprise feature here to see what kinds of discussions have been happening regarding this order. Or we could go ahead and create a new post, such as, what is the status on this order? And anybody that follows me or this customer or this order would then see this in their notification stream. And they can see this within the order, or if they go into their main menu and they see their stream here, they would also be able to see that information here. They can look at it on their home page or in their full Epicor social stream here. So that person could then reply and say, it's still awaiting shipment. And we could even insert links or attachments and so forth and then record that message. That's part of the Epicor Social Enterprise component. So we'll go ahead and go back to the order and refresh it, and we'll see all of those discussions that have occurred with it are now refreshed. And we can go between the order and the discussion, or we can tear the discussion off and snap it off to the right of the order if we want it to always be visible as we're working within the order. Now, at this point, we could go ahead and print the order, and we could just do a traditional print preview, or we can look at some of the capabilities of our advanced print management and DocStar integration. So we'll go ahead and generate this, and the system will now go ahead and turn this into an email, and if these items have any related documentation, specifications, or any other documents, they will also be sent. So we'll just go ahead and close these for a moment, and you can see this is what's going to get emailed to the customer. We'll go ahead into our inbox and assume that we are now the customer and do a send receive, and this is the information the customer gets. Dear Andrew, here's your order. And then the customer can go ahead and look at their order acknowledgement, but this washer has information and specifications associated with it, and the ability of DocStar and Epicor, which is DocStar's an Epicor component, to automatically pick up those related documents and send it along with the original document is very powerful and very flexible. Those capabilities can work throughout the system, whether it's purchase orders, travelers onto the shop floor, or what have you. Now let's look at a high level some of the options for fulfillment, picking, and shipping. What we're looking at here is our fulfillment workbench, which allows you to go ahead and fulfill supply for jobs, for orders, or transfer orders between your plants or locations or sites. In our case, we want to look at order fulfillment, and we'll go ahead and say, what if I want to see all orders that can be half fulfilled or more? So we'll put 50% in here, and then click search, and we can fill in a bunch of criteria here. Or you can use saved criteria if you have commonly used information. Say search, and we'll just go ahead and select everything that was found and pull that into our workbench. And then from here, we can go through and select the lines that we want to go ahead to pick and pack and ship. For the sake of example, we'll just go ahead and sort by order number, and using this first item, our 1032K nut, we'll go ahead and select it for shipping. Then we can go to our Actions menu and either directly release it for picking or reserve and release it for picking. We'll go ahead and reserve and release it. Pick a date to assign. And then at this point, you have the option, if you want, to print essentially a picking list. So we'll just quickly go ahead and preview that. And this is the type of documents or labels that you'll send out to be conventionally picked by paper. And you can see it's telling you where to go ahead and get it, and then you would hand fill in the information of what you picked. Another option for doing this is using the Epicor MES stations or touch pads down on the shop floor or handheld devices. So in this case, if we bring up a simulator of our handheld device, log into it, and look at our material handling queue, and go into our material queue, we can go ahead and see the items in the queue. This is everybody's queue, or I could look at my own queue. Once looking at your queue, you can then look through of all the items that require movement around the shop that you've been assigned. So in this case, we have these K-nuts, and we can go ahead and process them for movement if we want. Or we could work on any of the other items like this 1032 FW we just described. We'll just go ahead and hit process, which normally you would hit the touch screen. If you're using PCIDs, which are like container numbers, you can enter it here. And otherwise, you can just hit save, and the system will save that record. So we'll go ahead and exit out of our handheld. And we can also look at our traditional customer shipment entry screen, which is after it's been picked, what you're going to go ahead and ship. So in here, we could either go in and say what orders need to be picked, or since the person with the handheld went ahead and picked the orders, we could just go to Actions, Picked Orders, and see all orders that have been picked by somebody with the handheld or the tablet on the floor. And right from there, we can go ahead and say Create Pack. And the system will bring over the information from the pick into our packing slip, ready for manifesting, depending on whether you have the integrated manifesting or are using a standalone device, whether it's for an LTL or common carrier like UPS or FedEx or what have you. At this point now, we can go ahead and say Actions, Print, Packing Slip, Shipping Labels, or both. We'll say both, and we'll just print preview this to screen so you can see the two examples. And here's your typical shipping label. And if it was done through the manifest system, you would see all of the UPS and the barcodes. And then here's the packing list that's going to go in the box saying that what is in there and what's been picked, etc. Once everything looks accurate, you can go ahead and say this packing slip is ready to ship. The system will flag everything as shipped at that point and save it, and you're ready for your next shipment. Very simple, straightforward process. If your business was simpler, you could skip the whole handheld and picking function and just use that printed picking sheet we showed earlier, go straight into shipment entry, and then enter what you ship based off the paperwork. Now let's move more into the manufacturing and supply chain components of Epicor. What we're going to talk about now is Epicor's MRP processing, or Material Requirements Planning. What you see here is the MRP processing screen where you set up your MRP runs. You can see it has a number of options here, which we'll discuss a few of these. The first one is whether it's going to be a net change or a regenerative. A net change MRP run basically looks at what information has already been calculated and only calculates the information in terms of procurement or manufacturing for the items that have not already been addressed in a prior run. Regenerative deletes all of the MRP data from prior runs and builds everything from scratch. This takes longer, but every once in a while may need to be done to clean up any issues that may have occurred with your MRP. The cutoff date is how far in advance you want the MRP to process your data, and the scheduled start date is typically the current date, but you can schedule it into the future. Now, most companies set the MRP up on a schedule where it runs on a regular basis, and most often it's usually once per night, but you can adjust that as needed. However, you can also run the MRP manually whenever you need to by running the Submit or Process button up here. Some of the other options we have here are, for example, run finite scheduling, which will automatically build your production schedule based on the finite capacity available of machinery, equipment, and resources. Nor constrained materials, meaning have the system schedule jobs to be run even if the materials wouldn't be there. Some other features such as recycling the existing MRP jobs to reuse those numbers, or to run multiple MRP processes, which depending on the size of your organization and your server hardware can give you better performance, etc. One of the important capabilities here is behind the Filter tab. In the Filter tab, if you select nothing and process MRP, MRP will be run for every item that you have. If you select one or more sites, the MRP will only run for that site. You can also set MRP to only run on one part class or range of part classes, or a range or a single part product group. One of the newer features that has been added is you can actually run MRP against specific single parts or even a single part if necessary. And once you've made your selection criteria, if you want to run the MRP, you would simply click the process button, and now MRP begins to run. Again, since this is normally run at night, you're not looking at it, but if you wanted to monitor the progress, which also works for just about any back-end server process in Epicor, such as running reports or other process-based calculations, you can click the Epicor icon in your task tray, which brings up your Epicor System Monitor. That shows you any reports that have been run recently. It shows you the tasks that are actively running, tasks that have run in the past based on scheduled or manually, and tasks that are supposed to occur on a regular basis. In this case, our multi-company direct server process is set to run on various companies, and this is what handles the intercompany due to, due from purchase orders and sales orders among companies. Here, again, you can see the MRP is processing, and it typically will refresh automatically, or you can manually refresh by clicking the refresh button here. So you can see here now the multi-company direct process, which is programmed to happen every few minutes, is running, as well as the process MRP. If we scroll over, you can see the current activity message from process MRP. In this case, it's showing you which part number it's up to. And you can wait for it to refresh or manually refresh, and you'll see it moves along to different components to get an idea of what's going on. This is a detail form, and you can look at the log for that item as well by highlighting that row and hitting log if there are any messages. You can see details down here as well, and again we can hit refresh and see what it's up to at this point. We'll go ahead and close the system monitor and let the MRP process. Once the MRP is run, the data in the system is available to review. The Planning Workbench lets you look at jobs that need to be linked to an existing job or new jobs that need to be created for an item. These are suggestions, at which point you can then manually create the jobs. The Planned Job Status Maintenance screen allows you to look at the jobs that were generated by MRP, or should I say suggested by the MRP. So it's telling us these are all of the jobs that should get created and then sent out and produced in order to fulfill the requirements of your various orders and so forth. At any point you can take any of these or all of them and you can go ahead and firm it, which means we don't want it to just be theoretical. We want to go ahead and firm this order, and we can then even release it. So after it's firm, it gets released. And this time you can then firm process, and the system will go ahead and process all those orders that are supposed to be firmed. Once that's finished, that job will disappear because this dashboard is only showing us the jobs that need to be firmed up per the suggestions from the MRP. If you want to see the other jobs, you can go to the selection screen here and look at various statuses. For example, if we want to see jobs that are firm and engineered, you can hit search here, and now you'll see all the list of jobs that are firm and engineered, including the job that we just created. If we want to see jobs that are not yet firm, we'll get the list here, which is very similar to the base list, or jobs that are past due and need to be addressed. And these are all that are past their due date that haven't yet been scheduled. The Production Planner Workbench gets its data from the information generated by the multi-level pegging from the MRP. In this example here, when you open it up, it shows you all of the parts that you have to get manufactured in the system, and any of the ones that have shortage quantities are highlighted in yellow. If you want, you can just filter this to just the items that are short. So, for example, if we were to pick these biking gloves here, we can see this is needed for this firm job, and we're short a quantity of 24 of these. If you want to see what is available for the job, if there were any, you would see it here, and here's all the components needed for the job. For this part, you can see any shortages and all demand for that part. If we look at this 304 stainless sheet steel, you'll see this part is needed on all of these various jobs, which of course, as usual with Epicor, you could drill down and look at the details of those jobs. You can see what it's short for the current job in terms of quantities, and all requirements for this job if this job needed other components, as well as everything where this part is short on other jobs. If we were to look at this from a job perspective and pick one of our jobs here, then you get a different view. This shows you whatever shortages we have for jobs that have full availability, which by its nature would be none. If we look at our shortage jobs, these are all jobs that have at least one material that's short. If we highlight the material in this case, we can see it's again short the SS125. If there's anything else needed for the job and available, you would see it here. If we look through some of the other data, we may find some jobs that have more information. So if we look at this particular job, this is all the materials needed for the job, and that's available. This is the material that's short for the job, and here are all materials required for the job regardless of whether it's short or not short. Here are shortages where this part is used elsewhere, and here are all demands for the part, whether they've been pegged as available or short. So using this dashboard, you could see both from a job perspective and part perspective, everywhere your shortage impacts your operations. One result of the MRP process is that it looks through all of your various requirements for forecasts, orders, etc. And in those requirements, not only are jobs that need to be scheduled, as we saw previously, but are also materials that may be required at the job level, whether it's at the top level assembly or in lower level assemblies. The tool we use to manage purchasing in Epicor, whether the suggestions here are made from MRP or even made without the MRP module, is the Purchase Order Suggestion screen, in which Epicor will look through all of your components based on their various min-max settings are needed on various production jobs, so it applies to both distribution and manufactured parts, and then gives you the recommendations and suggestions that it expects you to do. In this particular example, you can see all the various items that it expects you to purchase, and if you scroll over, you can see the item, the description of the item. You can also see the suggested quantity, who the primary supplier is, and the actual quantity you want to buy. You can override the suggested supplier, pick anybody you want, override the recommended pricing based on the pricing records, and then go ahead and proceed and generate the purchase order. So in this example, we'll go ahead and order this BN13001 by clicking on the Buy button. We also have the option here to adjust our quantities. Maybe we want to just go ahead and buy 100 out of the 500, and the system has automatically updated the pricing based on the vendor. Maybe we called them and they gave us a better deal. You can also click on the Create RFQ button if you're using the Request for Quote capability. If not, just click on Buy and the system will generate purchase orders for all of the items that you go ahead and select to buy. Then you would go to the Actions menu, select Generate Purchase Orders, and the system will go ahead and generate all the purchase orders for the items that have been selected under Buy. Now let's take a look at the purchase order created by the Suggestions screen. We'll go ahead and bring up the latest POs, and you'll see the newest PO from Nordstrom is sitting here. You'll see that that purchase order was approved, and all of the quantities and pricing we entered are there. Now, if we go in here and we decide we want to print or send the PO, we'll say Print, and once again we'll show an example of our advanced print routing and our DocStar capabilities. So we'll select this format, which is programmed to do that, and we'll go ahead and we can either print preview it or just send it along and process it. So we'll go ahead and send this along for processing, and what the system is going to do is generate the purchase order to the customer, and it's going to pick up our corporate-wide purchasing policies and bring in whatever detailed attachments already relate to this item to send the specifications to the vendor. If we go to our inbox here and do a send receive to pull in our latest email, you'll see the customer now receives this email telling them the attached purchase order is available. And you can see those right here. So if you look at it within here, we can click on the PO form, and we can go ahead and look at the related attachment or guide for that particular part that was sent along with it, as well as our company-wide terms and conditions that get sent with all POs based on our settings. So to summarize, you can see that we were able to go ahead and allow Epicor's system and MRP to automatically choose what items need to get purchased, select and suggest what's needed, and then as the buyer, I was able to go ahead and confirm those, create the purchase orders, send the purchase orders to the vendor, as well as any related documents that should go with those purchase orders. And that's how Epicor streamlines your replenishment, purchasing, and material management functions. Once you have your job scheduled for production, the next area that Epicor helps streamline your environment in is actually capturing what is happening on the jobs in real time. We do this through a function called MES, or Manufacturing Execution System. The Epicor MES component is designed to run typically on ruggedized kiosks throughout your manufacturing floor. Here is an example of the out-of-the-box MES menu. If we were to log in, which we would typically be barcoding our name badge, you can see the various functions that an employee can do. Now, the out-of-the-box MES component can access a large variety of functions. This includes looking up information such as all the details about the job, about the materials being made, reporting non-conforming materials, asking requests to move materials, reporting quantities complete, looking at our electronic work queue instead of using paper travelers, entering counts, and dozens of others. These are just the production-related common functions. If we go to the Materials tab, if you're a material worker, typically these are the people moving materials in and out of bins and between equipment and machinery. We have our shipping and receiving functionality, a service manager, and supervisors area where they can get an overview of what's going on the plant floor. As good as this all is, this may actually be too complicated for most factory workers, and because of that, the MES function is highly customizable. If we minimize this, here is a version of the MES system that's designed to be extremely simple, where the user, or production worker, can start setup activities, start production activities, look up information about the job, look at his work queue, and issue materials. So, for example, here, if we were to go to Start Production Activity, we are now being asked what job we want to work on. In our example, it's going to be Job 2124 and Operation Assemble per Print. Again, typically this will be either coming from an electronic work queue or a printed barcoded traveler where you would scan the information and all of this would fill in automatically. At this point, you would typically hit OK, but you also have the ability to look at more information about this step as well as any attached documents to the job. If I go to Documents, we'll see here we have some work instructions and a machine setup. If I go to the work instructions, we can see the details of those instructions, and you can see these are a very complicated way of making this item. Measure once, cut twice. Of course, this can be any type or level of detailed documentation. The machine setup just shows you that we also have the ability to attach anything that the machine can display, including a video, which in this case is just a video of how to set up the machine. So once you've entered the job and operation you're working on, you would now typically log out and allow another person to use the station. But in our case, let's assume, say, it was 30 minutes later, we would go ahead and end our activity. And at this point, we would enter the number of units complete. We can enter any scrap quantities or any non-conforming quantities and give a reason. So if we were to say one was non-conforming, we can pick from our reason codes and say it seems to have bubbles in it, and this will go into our quality control system for review. You can also automatically print tags on typically thermal printers that would look or would be typically printed out and then attached to the materials as it moves along throughout the shop, allowing it to be easily identified and tracked. You can add any notes that you did during the job, and then at that point you can click OK and move on to your next operation. And it's really as simple as that. Again, you're typically just clocking in and clocking out and or issuing materials to jobs. Financial management. We're now going to get into the financial management areas of the Epicor ERP solution. We'll start with the Accounts Receivable module and some key highlights. First, we'll look at a common financials report called the Aged Receivables Report, which is typically used to show your outstanding invoices from your customers or to your customers, what the remaining open balances are, and how old they are. You have a variety of options, such as aging it from the due date or from the invoice date. You can age as of today or any date in the past so that you can, for example, supply your bank with your accounts receivable aging as of a point in time in the past. The system will automatically remove applied cash and new invoices that are generated to give you an accurate view. You can do a variety of filters here, such as by a general ledger account code or by a range or a selection of customers, and you can decide if this is going to be a summarized report just showing the amount owed by customer or show all the individual invoice detail. So we'll just go ahead and display to the screen the standard stock report, and like any Epicor report, it can be customized in SSRS or SQL Server Reporting Services or Crystal Reports. And here's your example of your report showing you your invoice date, your due date, and my sample data here happens to be fairly old, so most of the invoices are overdue, but you get the feel for the report, and then at the end it shows your totals and how old they are. Now we'll go ahead and do a customer cash receipt. The first screen that you typically see in cash receipts is the group screen, where you can pick an existing group number or enter a new one. So we'll go ahead and put in a group number here. The system will say it doesn't exist and we'll say it's new. Then we'll pick the bank account this money goes into and the payment method, where you can see the default is check, but it could be coming from EFT, ACH, a lockbox, or other methods. One thing to keep in mind is a group is a way for Epicor to allow an employee to do a batch of work, such as a series of check receipts, while another employee also does a series of check receipts, and when this employee posts this information, it's not affecting or posting the other employee's information, so it allows you to segregate those into batches. Once you select that, we'll tell it to go ahead and do a new invoice payment, which means we got to check against invoices. And you're now looking at the check. You enter the check number. You put in the amount of the check, and then typically the most common choice here is now to enter the customer ID. By entering the customer ID, if you go over to the invoice selection, you'll now see all of the open invoices for this customer. You could click automatic selection and the system will try and apply all of the oldest invoices first until it uses up all the amount to apply. Or you can put in the quick search of the invoice number you see on the check stub from your vendor, and once you hit tab, the system will find that invoice and check it off and apply it. In this case, the invoice was $1,200. Suppose the check paid 3 invoices, so we'll go ahead and check these 3, and when all 3 add up, you should have an unapplied amount of 0. If everything looks good, you can now say apply, and the system will now apply these invoices in full. There are some additional options here, such as miscellaneous fees, or perhaps on that check you saw a bank fee, as well as a debit note. A debit note is common where if a customer takes a discount, sometimes known as an off-invoice allowance for something, without having to exit the screen and create a separate debit memo, you can do it all within the cash receipts process and a reason and have it all total out to the amount of the customer's check. If everything looks good, you would typically then go ahead and print a group edit list. This list allows you to take a look at the data entered, and in some cases you would typically have a third-party person approve or review the information. Either way, it's a chance to check your work before posting it. Once it's posted, you then have to do reversals rather than simple edits. So it shows you in this case we got one check. That check was in this amount applied to these invoices, and from a general ledger perspective, it's going to debit, cash, and credit accounts receivable. If that looks good, then you would typically go ahead and say post, process the post, and all of the information will then get updated permanently in the system. Now let's take a look at some of the key accounts payable functions. First thing we'll look at is something called the AP Invoice Workbench. This allows you to look at your various vendors, and then once you select a vendor, you can see their open or available invoices. For example, this supplier, Depot, has these following invoices open. Not only is this a view, but you can also see any invoices that they currently have on hold, or invoices that were on hold and were then approved. This is invoices by vendor. This is just invoices in general that are held or on hold across vendors or all invoices. In addition, when you're in this view, you can actually put invoices on hold. So if we're in the vendor depot and we're looking at their invoices, you can simply check on hold invoice, and that invoice will be put on hold. In addition, up here, you can actually put the entire vendor on hold, and this will hold all payments going to that vendor until they're taken off of hold payments versus just on an invoice-by-invoice basis. So it's a way of basically managing all of your payables from one central workbench. Another view here is our expenditures by supplier, which basically is using our dashboard technology. When you first open it up, it shows all of your suppliers in a graph with their total amounts, as well as the data here in detail showing you grouped and summarized by their average amount and their total amount owed. If you hit the plus sign next to them, you can see the details making all of that up in terms of the amounts and so forth, all summarized by year and by month. If you were to use the filter here on the supplier group and pick the miscellaneous suppliers and refresh, you'll see now it's a little easier to view all of the vendors that are flagged as miscellaneous and their totals, as well as their detailed data and a breakdown in this graph. Now let's look at a typical transaction, AP payments. Like many other financial transactions, it starts with a group screen. So we'll go ahead and create a group number, and a group is a way for you to put in a batch of information that a worker is going to work on. And then that worker can then review their work and post it. And they can do so independently from other employees, so multiple people can be paying invoices simultaneously within the same company. You'd pick your default bank account and some other information. At this point, we want to go ahead and do a payment, and here you can now do a one-off selection of payment against an invoice, or even a miscellaneous payment in case somebody is there, for example, waiting for delivery of pizza and wants to get paid. Or you can go to the Actions menus and say Select Invoices, and perhaps we want to select all invoices due before next Friday so that you pick up everything that's going to be due. And we can also pick up other filters such as just certain types of suppliers, certain ones in certain currencies, or what have you. But we'll accept this, and this will give us a selection list of everything that meets that qualification. We can say select all, or you can just pick individual invoices here if you wanted. So we can see the full amounts. As you check off the invoices, you'll see the system will total the amount you're expecting to pay. So as you go through it, you can see what your current amount to pay is and what's available, so you can understand what the impact of moving forward would be on your cash flow. Once we select that, it'll bring those invoices in, and then you can move on to the next screen. Typically, what you would now do is go ahead and print an edit list, which allows you to check what your checks are going to be doing before you actually print them. So we'll go ahead and preview that. And you can see here all of the suppliers set up to get paid and the amounts that are getting paid, as well as the debits and credits that would occur and in which fiscal period. Typically at this point, if everything looks good, you would then say process payments, which would go out and print your payments. So if we do that, you would then get a view of what your typical checks would look like, which here is the top stub, and then here is the check amount, typically printed on a pre-printed check form. We also have the ability to do checks where we actually print all of the checks on security paper. And then once you've printed your checks, you would then typically go to the post function and you would say yes, and at that point the system would post your data to the various subledgers and the general ledger. Now let's discuss the general ledger. First, let's take a look at something called account segment values. Typically in your general ledger, you're going to have a chart of accounts, but then you would segment your chart into different segments to be able to slice and dice your financials for the business. In this particular chart of accounts, the chart has a department, a division, as well as the ability to reference a customer or employee specifically in what's called a dynamic segment. Dynamic segments don't create physical accounts in your chart that clutter up your master chart of accounts, but they allow you to post details to those dynamic segments so that you could, for example, do a P&L by customer or by employee. In this case, if we were to look at the department segment and then click on the segment values, you'd see we have the following departments. If we bring them in, there's the corporate department, the sales department, the G&A department. So when you select segment 20 or value 20 for the department segment, it goes to the G&A department. You even have an option to set effectivity date ranges by that segment value as well as for the natural account. If we were to pick instead of department, say division, you would see we have the following divisions, which in this case are based on site locations for the company. So if we look at 01 for Rockford site, you can see here the account will get Rock as an abbreviation in the description, and again, that segment too can have effectivity dates. The next thing we're going to take a look at is our general journals. The system has regular journals and recurring journals. Recurring journals work identically to the general journals, so we'll just show a general journal. In this sample general journal, we have multiple journals stored in here. The first one is an example of reversing. Once we select reversing and hit journal, we can see that there's one debit and one credit. The key point on the reversing journal here is that reverse is checked and a date is here. So on this date, this journal entry will automatically reverse. You'll also note that the date here does not have to be the first day of a month. It could be any date in the middle of the month. The next example is our import journal. This allows us to illustrate our ability to bring data in from outside of the system. Anywhere you have a grid in Epicor, you're able to paste data in from an external application. So in this case, in Excel, we have a journal entry here. If we highlight this journal entry and copy it to the clipboard, where we have our grid here, we can say paste insert, and Epicor will paste in all of the information as if it was keyed in. Anywhere you see a data entry grid in Epicor, you can use that capability to streamline your data entry operations. The next thing we're going to show is an allocation. If we go into our Actions menu and say Allocations Template, we can pick one of our allocation templates here and then put in an amount. So for example, if we got a $1,000 insurance bill and say OK, according to the template, it spreads that $1,000 out to these various departments based on various percentages. Here is an example of a journal that's in another currency. So you can see here, if we look at the details, that the currency is in euro instead of US dollars. And finally, an example journal entry where you can see that the journal entry is for multiple companies. So you can pick a debit in one company and a credit in another company, and the system will automatically do the due to and due from journal entries required. So that's an example of various journal entry capabilities we have within the system. Finally, we're going to take a look at one of our trackers here. In this case, we have an account selected, account 2000, accounts payable, showing fiscal year 2011 by period. And for each period, you can see the total debits and credits for that period. If you highlight a given period and then say transaction detail, you'll see all of the detailed transactions and postings. And you'll see the system in this case has payments and invoices and even specific references to those invoices that can be drilled down into. If we were to pick, for example, our current year in this example, we can see here we have payments and invoices. Here we have an invoice for ABC Metals for $25. If we right-click and drill into the invoice tracker, we can see the original invoice that made up that journal entry. And here you can see the header and the detail lines that were in there. In this case, it was a miscellaneous charge. More importantly, along with this invoice, we had gone ahead when we entered it and attached this attachment in our DocStar application. With Epicor DocStar, you have the ability to manage attachments and versions and so forth, which we show in other videos. In this case, you can see the original invoice as well as the sign-off on that invoice. Even without DocStar, you're still able to attach documents, but you don't get the full document management power of Epicor's powerful workflow-enabled document management system. Epicor Excel Connect is a tool that plugs into Microsoft Excel that allows Excel to directly talk to Epicor's database. Of course, you could always export data to Excel, or you could even link via ODBC Excel to Epicor, but it is not at the same real-time level that Excel Connect can do. Excel Connect initially was ideally designed for doing financial statements like P&Ls and balance sheets. Recently, Epicor released Excel Connect 7, which takes all of the capabilities of Excel Connect and brings it so that you can work with data from throughout the application in virtually every module and table, essentially making it a reporting tool that you may want to end up using instead of SSRS because it's much easier to use and people have familiarity with the use of Excel. For a quick example here, we've got some pre-built templates, so we'll go ahead and take one of them and drag them out onto our palette here. By doing so, Excel Connect will now run through a series of spreadsheets and build out our demo templates that are directly connected to Epicor. So if you look at it, the first one is an executive dashboard that shows the company here and the year, and then you look through and you see that you've got these various various Excel visualizations. The nice thing here is this is actually all real-time data. So if we were to pick a different year, like 2015, you'll notice the data here updates instantly. We can pick a different period, or we can even pick a different company code. So instead of Epic 06, we make it Epic 03, and the data will update automatically. Another example here is a trend statement. So here we got a simple P&L by trend for period 10. If I were to, for example, make this period 1, you'll see the numbers will all update. If I were to highlight this column using standard Excel Shift Select and now pull to the right, just like Excel, the system will go ahead and pull the various periods out, except the numbers under each column reflect the period. Essentially, you only have to learn approximately 3 new functions in Excel in order to fully build these types of templates. Here's an example of a rolling 12 months financials that shows you your actual information for the last 12 months starting at where you start from. So here we started in period December. We started in September. All of the data would update the rolling 12 months from September, as well as a chart. Here's a rolling forecast that shows you your actual data and your remaining budget data, and then the total for the year. Again, you can look at it for different years, different points in time from budgets and actuals. Here's an income statement showing your month-to-date prior year versus this year in variance, as well as year-to-date prior year, current year in variance for whatever year you have here. If we were to look at a different month, for example, and say month 5, you'll see the numbers all update in real time. Looking at a budget versus actual, this shows you your budget versus your actual for the company here. You could even filter this by a location code, for example, or a department. Here's a budget summary showing your month-to-date budget, and your actual budgets. You can look at a quarterly financial that shows us our first quarter months and then the total. Again, you can pick a different quarter. This is a cash flow report to show you one of the more complicated types of financials to do, and here we're doing a multi-year FASB 52 cash flow. And here's a simple balance sheet, a consolidated balance sheet because Excel Connect can consolidate across multiple legal entities, and a weekly income statement. Very simple report, but what it's illustrating is the system doesn't have to do financial reporting on a month-to-month basis. You can actually do it within a range of days. So for month 9, day 6, the numbers will now update based on all of the transactional details. So you can do financials for any range of dates and not just monthly buckets. If you hit the plus sign here, you can see it for multiple weeks across. So this gives you an idea of what Excel Connect can do. You build your templates and the system then drives the data from the underlying Epicor data, making complex financial statements a breeze and the ability to use complex reporting across Epicor. We're now going to take a look at Excel Connect 7. Excel Connect 7 is the latest version of the Excel Connect series, but it dramatically differs from the prior versions. The primary differences in the design is that Excel Connect 7 was built to access most of Epicor's data, not just general ledger. So, like previous versions of Excel Connect, it can present sophisticated and flexible financial statements. It can also do reporting on virtually all of your key areas of Epicor. To show a simple way or how Excel Connect directly accesses Epicor, we'll go ahead and just do a simple query. On the left you see the Epicor ERP and then the major database areas of the system. We'll go into Financial Management, then into General Ledger, and then within General Ledger we'll pick something simple like Informational. And within Informational, we'll go ahead and just bring the chart of accounts in and drag it here. Once we do that, the query window opens, and the only required information here is which company we want the chart from. We'll go ahead and pick this company here and say OK, and now it'll default to putting that data where the cursor is in Excel. We'll go ahead and click OK, and you'll see it'll directly pull the current chart of accounts out from Excel from that company into your spreadsheet. Now let's go over and look at some of the pre-existing examples here that show some of the more sophisticated capabilities. This here is a dashboard that shows us a variety of information, including profitability from the general ledger, sales by salesperson from the sales and receivables module, top customers, for example, month to date and what their values are. And we can go ahead and use any Excel tools here to make this larger if we want to. Scroll down, we can see sales performance throughout the months, and over to the right we can see more information in terms of top customers. Once we're in here, because this is Excel Connect, this is a live link to our data. This is showing us fiscal year 2015 for period 6. If we were to change this to period 7, you'll see the data here now instantly updates to show us the information relating to period 7. If we change this to 2016, all of the data would update again because it's directly linked to the underlying data. If we go to another example here, we have a trend statement for our income statement starting at month 7. Since this is Excel, you can see it'll grow it to those months and years, giving us the data that's in Excel for fiscal year 2015. Over here we have a statement by division, so we'll go ahead and say all divisions, and it's showing us for 2015 our P&L for the company. If we were to just pick, for example, the service division, now we only see the revenue that relates to the service division in its various categories. Here's a rolling income statement that always shows you your past information summarized by revenue and costs. And if you hit the plus sign here, you can then get the details of the accounts within it. Here's an income statement, which is an actual versus budget. Here's the actual and the budget. If we pick a different month here, say April, now it shows us the actual January through May, and then the budget for the remaining years. So it's a sliding budget. Here's an income statement showing month to date and year to date. Again, all live, referenceable to current data. And here is an AR aging report, pulling from our aging data, aged as of the date shown here. If we wanted to age as a different date, for example, December 1st, select this and you can see now by customer their aging and their trend aging over the prior months. And if we scroll over, you can see upcoming due invoices and trends as well. Here's a customer analysis report showing you by customer the amount invoiced, the average amount, and quantities and gross margins for whatever is selected here. And we can pick different territories and what have you. So if we say corporate, you can see we have limited sales out of corporate. If we say Northeast, here's the Northeast data. Here's a sales analysis by salesperson by month for the year selected here, and then a related graph shown below it. A consolidated income statement showing you, like the original Excel Connect can talk to multiple companies and consolidate across companies without the need for the Epicor multi-site module. Here's some variance analysis, a cash flow, a balance sheet. So as you can see here, Excel Connect is now a very powerful reporting tool that allows you to automatically generate the information that you need directly from Excel, pulling out of Epicor. Another key capability of Excel Connect is called Epicor Excel broadcast. If we go over to our first sheet where we have our broadcast information set up, in here we have the system performing three functions. It writes an HTML file to the desktop for an income statement trend view. It will send a PDF out to Scott for our dashboard of our overall company and of an actual versus budget dashboard. And here it'll send a spreadsheet income statement out to Scott. If you wanted to here, you could filter this so that Scott only gets his division or service area. We'll go ahead and hit run, and now Excel Connect is going ahead and processing all of those various commands in the broadcast list and either writing out the files or emailing them and doing the various options that you have available. So as we wait for it to finish, it's now completed. The entire process took 36 seconds. This normally happens on a scheduler behind the scenes. We've just ran it manually. And again, here is where you can set up who's going to receive it, and here's the format you want to receive it. And you can see it offers a number of options, including XPS, PDF, Excel spreadsheets, CSVs for exports, and what have you. Now, if we were to go to our desktop here, you can see we have files on our desktop here called values only, for example. And we can go into here and see what the HTML looks like. And it's gone ahead and generated that same spreadsheet into a website page that anybody can view. If we look at our inbox and our email and ask it to pull the latest email down, we can see we've received 2 emails. The first, as we asked it to do, was to send an overview of finance here. And we'll just make this a little larger so we can see. And you can see that same information, but instead of being changeable in terms of period and year, it's a fixed view that's sent to that person for their dashboard. And here is the income statement showing actual versus budget as well that we told it to send automatically. And then in the other email, just showing a different example, this was an example where we sent a spreadsheet of the results to that person showing their particular division that we're interested in. You'll notice they can't pick other areas, so we were able to push out the data for the relevant division. So that in a nutshell is Excel Connect, and it really allows you to create most of your own reporting yourselves without the need to learn advanced developer tools like SQL Server reporting services and the like. Thank you for your time.